think that if anyone is sitting here on Monday in week 2 of this thing feeling happy, they're probably wrong or misinformed.
Well, is it Matt Canada? Is it Mitchell Trubisky? Is it the offensive line? Terrell Austin? Omar Khan? Well, regardless of how strongly you feel about placing the blame on any of these particular facets of the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's one common denominator here. Mike Tomlin. I can feel the heat in the kitchen already. One side of the aisle is screaming, "But Steve, he's been above 500 every year. He was 8-5 with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph." While the other side screams, "He's only won 3 playoff games in the last decade, and he should have been fired after the Tebow game." While some of those things are indeed true, I need you to bear with me for a moment. I'm a fan of Mike Tomlin. I like the way he talks.
It's a fine line between, drinking wine and squashing grapes.
I think he's a better leader of men than I could ever even imagine being.
Don't blink, let's go!
And in my opinion, he's already done enough to be considered something approaching a Hall of Fame head coach in the NFL. But even in his 16th year in the league, we have to acknowledge that he's in uncharted territory. That's odd to say about somebody that's the second longest tenured head coach in the league after only Bill Belichick, but just like the man in the hoodie, Mike T is now heading to battle without his trusty old gunslinger for the first time in his career. Sure, I know you're going to point out the 2019 season, and I do concede that Mike kept our heads above water that season, somehow getting this team to 8-5 before collapsing in a pile of duck bones in December, but that was different. That was an emergency situation. What we're seeing right now with the retirement of both Kevin Colbert and Ben Roethlisberger is Tomlin officially taking the reins as the guy in Pittsburgh. I'm not one of the people that discredits Mike Tomlin for what he did early in his career. The argument that he won with Cowher's team has always been misguided and demeaning, and I hate it. So please, if you're about to comment that, go eat a banana and come back with a better thought. The reality is you'd be better suited to say he won with Kevin Colbert's team. Well, Kevin Colbert is gone now. So is Ben Roethlisberger. This truly must be another record for Mike, by the way. How many coaches in the history of a sport have ever gone 15 years without ever even needing to consider the most important position on their roster? Say what you want about the cantankerous old gunslinger known as Large Benjamin, but even in his last year, where he so clearly had little left to give physically, he pulled out 7 game-winning drives and dragged a team starting Kendrick Green at center to the playoffs. I admit it was time for Ben to move on, and to be honest, even with the feel-good moments we got last year, he probably should have left after 2020. We even have indications that Colbert and Tomlin likely were ready to move on, but they didn't, because they didn't have the most power in the room. The 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback did. After brisk and uncomfortable exits for so many star players in the past, Art Rooney and the Steelers afforded number 7 an entire extra season to play because he wanted it. Which brings me to a quick point about last season, which is, did they really set Ben up for success in retrospect, or did they simply grin and bear it while complaining about a lack of mobility at the position constantly? You find me another instance of a team starting a 3rd-round guard at center in front of a 39-year-old quarterback. I'll wait. So this brings me back around to Mike Tomlin. The thing about all of our bickering this week about the current state of the team is that it doesn't matter. If you want to blame Matt Canada, Mitchell Trubisky, or the offensive line, guess what? You know who brought all of those people in?
Cut your damn eyelids off, man!
I'm not going to do some deep dive to kneecap Mike T. I love the man. But let's just take a quick look at his coaching tree after 16 years. And the quarterbacks developed under him? I can make a legitimate case that the best quarterback drafted and developed under Mike Tomlin is either Landry Jones or Mason Rudolph. What does that say about his eye for the position? I guess my entire problem with the last year or so of Steelers football is that it has come to completely embody the mentality of this older version of Mike T. For a dude who talks constantly about not living in his fears, the team is constantly conservative and plays to just stay in games with the hope that they can pull out some magic in the end. But in week 2, we already saw what happens when you try that formula with a QB who just doesn't have it. It's not going to work. So why do it? I thought we don't seek comfort. I thought we'd rather say whoa than sick 'em. I'm pretty sure almost all of us are screaming sick 'em at Mitch on almost every pass play while he's carefully dumping another one off to Najee. Everything about the way that they're bringing Kenny Pickett along absolutely reeks of timidness. Even if he's not ready to be a stud in this league, they drafted him because he was the most pro-ready quarterback in the eyes of almost everyone across the league. Guys don't come in and sit on the bench anymore. It's not the 90s. Did the Bills mess up Josh Allen? Did the Chargers mess up Justin Herbert? Do you think the Bills regret moving on from Tyrod Taylor, who got them to the playoffs? Of course not. In this league, you can have great skill players, a good defense, whatever. But when it comes to real success, you don't have anything if you don't have a good quarterback. So Mike, what'll it be? Do we live in our fears with the low ceiling vet? Or do we cut our eyelids off and start determining what the future looks like instead of dragging our feet to leave an era that was last prosperous 6 years ago? Here we go. And if you're still here, please consider joining our Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube to support the show. Thanks for watching and see you next week.